Hello, and welcome to the eCampus News webcast. My name is Andrew Barber. I'm the Senior Contributing Editor here at eCampus News, and I'll be acting as the moderator for today's presentation, which is sponsored by Nyansa. It's titled Big Data IT Network Analytics Meet Higher Education. Now, before I introduce today's main speaker, who will in turn introduce speakers from Brandeis and Liberty Universities, I want to take just a couple of moments to highlight some items about the console that you're looking at. First, today's event will be recorded, so you don't have to worry about taking notes. In a couple of days, we'll send you an email that will contain a link to the recorded event, and you'll also be able to download a PDF of the presentation from that same email. And second, please ask questions. At any time during the presentation, if you have a question, just type it into the Q&A box on your console and hit the submit button. Now, speakers will be discussing and answering these questions throughout the course of the hour. We also have a chat function which can be launched via the blue group chat icon down at the bottom of your screen. Now, use chat to talk among yourselves or to contact me or the eCampus News team with any technical issues or other concerns you may have. However, please don't use the chat function to ask our speakers questions. They simply aren't going to have time to monitor the chats while they give the presentation. So again, if you have a question for the speakers, please use the Q&A panel instead. And with that out of the way, let me formally introduce our main speaker. GT Hill is Director of Product and Technical Marketing for Nyansa. After spending 10 years working with Wi-Fi vendors, GT moved to the software space, focusing on solutions that improve the end-user network experience. GT also has more than a decade's experience as an employee technology trainer, so I'm sure we're in for a real treat today. Welcome, GT. It's an honor to have you here today.
Thank you. I apologize to the audience that I don't quite have your awesome accent, but I do appreciate you having us today. And thank you, everyone. Again, I reiterate to ask questions throughout. We have two wonderful resources here on the call today that we'll introduce shortly. So as Andrew had mentioned, I came from the Wi-Fi space, and I know that networking itself can be quite painful. And the pain has changed over the last few years, for the last 10 years, because now we have a lot more devices that we really can't control. And those devices really don't even they don't even have the tools on board to do something as simple as troubleshooting that, you can't do just a ping from an iPhone. You can't do that from someone's personal device. So that is definitely kind of the root of the problem that we see. So Nyansa itself, we are a Silicon Valley startup founded in 2013. The three gentlemen you see pictured there, great backgrounds from MIT, Meraki, Aruba, Google. So just a great bunch of guys got together with the goal of truly defining analytics the way it should be. And if you look at what analytics should be, it should give you an answer. So analytics should provide answers to a question. I've noticed that since I've moved to this space that a lot of analytics is kind of the new cool thing to say. It's, if you do analytics, that's great. But a lot of analytics organizations are giving you more data or will compile data for you from multiple sources, and that's great. But really, data should be turned into analytics, which should provide answers. And that's what Voyance, which is our product from Nyansa, does. Today, I'd like to introduce the two guest speakers we have. Both of them are running Voyance in their system today. Mr. Mike Fitzgerald from Brandeis University and Mr. TJ Norton from Liberty University. Say hi to the crowd, gentlemen.
Hi, folks. I'm glad to be here today. Hope we get some useful information out to you.
Hey, guys. This is TJ here. It's nice to be here and to be able to talk about Nyansa today.
Cool. So, Mike, I'm going to start with you. And again, everybody out there, these two gentlemen have been running Voyance for quite some time. They have phenomenal networks and have some of the best experience out there with their products. So use them as a resource for questions, and feel free to put those in any time. So I'm going to start with a question here. Mike, first off, can you tell me just a little bit about your network infrastructure, and what are some of the things that are, what keep you up at night?
Okay, so we are Aruba networks on the edge, both wired and wireless, and Cisco behind the scenes on the border and core and distribution. I've got about 2,000 access points, lots of different models scattered around our campus. We have about 75 to 80 buildings on our campus, about 93 data closets. Things to keep me up at night is probably what I don't know was going on my network. Break fix is easy. But what you don't know what's going on, the stuff that sort of works and sort of doesn't, that's the hard part.
Excellent. So TJ, I'll ask you the same question. Tell us a little bit about your network and what keeps you up at night.
No, certainly. So, I'm TJ at Liberty University. We're Cisco Edge, and regard to the Edge, we're Cisco to the Edge to the Internet, and our complete wired infrastructure is Cisco. Our wireless infrastructure is completely Aruba. I have 2 HA7220 masters and 6 7220 locals with an N+1 7240 and about 3,100 access points. I am the lead architect, so I handle all of the wireless for the university, and I'm right there with Mike. The biggest things and the biggest challenge for me is, not knowing what's happening on my network and what's happening on the client side.
Perfect. I appreciate that. So the biggest headache that, in talking to these guys and what we see out there is the biggest headaches really out there are just the devices are really different than they used to be. It used to be that IT would issue a lot of devices, but the EDU space and higher education has basically invented BYOD. That was, they've been the pioneers there in how to solve a lot of these problems. But as they both said, the client information, the tools out there today don't tell you about your end user experience. And so when something goes wrong, there's a lot of finger pointing, what's actually the problem, and then there's the lack of evidence to solve that problem. It's, you're looking through logs, you're looking through, runtime scripts, you want to see what's happening. And what we think is what we've seen, and I'll ask these guys later, but we see that Voyance helps fix a lot of this information, is to make it a lot more accessible. Those kind of problems tend to cost a lot of money. In fact, Infonetics did a survey and did research on this, that the cost to fix things is quite small. In fact, Mike said that break fix is the easy part, and the cost that you see is quite small. But the productivity loss is quite high. And in everybody here, from a campus perspective, the quality of education today can be directly related to the quality of the technology, the connectivity that people get. And that's what we're seeing, and it's quite dramatic and quite huge. The difference for Voyance, for Nyansa, is that we are a network analytics platform that looks at things from a different perspective. We see everything from the time the client connects to wired or wireless, through the AAA service, through Radius, through DHCP, through ARP, DNS, and even applications themselves. We know the user experience. So I see Steve is on the line. So Steve, let's say your device is connected to a network running Voyance. We can see every step of the way and evaluate your experience every step of the way. So if you have an issue, as both Mike and TJ said, is they want to know what's happening without people telling them. They want to know what's happening on their network proactively. And this is what we're doing. We see the experience from every client and device. At its most basic function, what Voyance can do for you is root cause analysis and remediation. And that just says, okay, Steve, you're having a problem, you're having a DNS issue, you're having a Wi-Fi issue, and in plain English, Voyance will say, here's the problem, here's the root cause. The root cause of that is there's interference near your access point or near the client, and what we say to go do to fix it would be, take this action, do a site, go do check for interferers or run a spectrum analysis. Or, maybe your DNS server is overloaded. Again, it's not just wireless, it goes all the way up the stack. But as you take that experience of seeing one single client from the client's perspective, from one single client, what about the entire campus? The first thing our solution does is it looks at all these client devices and creates a baseline. This baseline is really important to understanding where your network is today. And the baseline just says, well, here's the percentage of people that face problems with this service. So both TJ and Mike running Voyance would be able to go in very simply and say, okay, well, I see my DHCP service is causing 2% of any transactions, or 2% of any congestion, user congestion problems. So I see a question has come in. So I'm going to hit, I'll hit both of you guys with this one at a time. With this information, this baseline experience, how have you seen, has that helped? Did you understand your user experience better? TJ, I'll go first with you on this one.
No, certainly. So, one of the biggest challenges we have today is that we have a ton of visibility from our perspective and what we see over the network, but we don't have a lot of visibility in regards to what the clients see. So, like, for instance, one of the biggest challenges for us is like, hey, for example, you ran out of DHCP leases on guest. We want to see that before it happens. So for me, like, as an example, just this weekend, we had that exact issue that just happened where we ran out of DHCP leases on guests. And we knew about it before we even started getting complaints from the end users, which was huge for us because we were able to kind of dive in and see what's going on. And we're aware of it now, so this summer one of the things that we're going to be doing now is redoing our guest pools.
Awesome. So Mike, I'll repeat the question a little bit more succinctly. How important is it to you to understand the user experience? So I'll chime in here. When I saw this baseline, I thought, wow, that's really neat to be able to see that. How has that been useful for you at your organization?
Well, the baseline tells us what things look like when things are normal. I mean, we can have some loss, but we'd ideally not like to have any. But we get an idea of just what's normal for our network, and so then it's very easy to notice something that becomes abnormal. So it's always a good starting point to know that, this looks normal for the network today. Everything looks good. Oh, wait a minute, here's a spike. Something's going on there, because that alerts us that it's something we have to go and look at. And it might be something that we can take action on right away, or it might be something we just have to look at systemically and decide, we need to take a look at the bigger picture and maybe do it might be add some access points. It might be, turn down the power on some access points. The product tends to lead you in the right direction based on the analysis it makes when it sees things vary from the baseline.
Awesome. And one of the things so that's that baseline. Once that's established, the next thing is that, we all have probably asked ourselves this question, am I normal? And that's a question that we've got from both these gentlemen before, on the call, and other university customers, is, okay, I see my baseline, and that's awesome, but is it normal to have 7% of people face congestion with Wi-Fi traffic? So what we do is we do what we call this whole cloud sourcing idea. And cloud sourcing is the way to cross-compare organizations. So both TJ and Mike can log into Voyance, and they can look very simply and say, how am I comparing to other universities that are like me, which means they're running, in these gentlemen's case, that are the same Wi-Fi vendor and about the same size. How am I comparing to my peers out there? This gets so interesting. I won't name the customer, but the customer is an SEC, is a university in the SEC. And the SEC is so competitive, he actually wants to be able to see his comparison to other SEC schools so he can make his network better than other SEC schools. And this allows you to be able to do things like that. Again, bring some questions in. I do see a few coming in, but please answer or bring in questions as you come up with them, and I'll ask these gentlemen about that. So very quickly, how does this work? We don't require any sensors or any agents on client devices. That's just not realistic today. But what Voyance does to have all this power is we have what's called a software crawler. The software crawler is it's VM-based, and it does three things. It does deep packet inspection off of a mirrored span or tap port. It connects to your wireless LAN controller. And then the third thing it does is it takes metrics. So we don't take any payload data. All your payload data stays on your network. We don't touch it. And then we take metrics and we send it northbound to our cloud service. And our cloud service is what you log into. So you'll never log into your controller once it's configured. So once you get that done, all the data goes to the cloud, and that's where all the magic really happens. Hey guys, the question just came in. How long did it take you to install that? So just, real quick, Mike, you're up first.
Start to finish, I think we had the box racked and configured and talking to the network in about an hour.
Awesome. TJ?
No, same here. I'd say it took us about an hour and a half, 2 hours to get everything unboxed in the rack and up and running.
Great. Cool. So a lot of people ask, what data are we inspecting? What are we actually looking at? And this is, I'm not going to obviously list all of these out, but we see everything the controller sees, and we see everything that happens over the wire. Everything that happens on the wire, again, we're doing deep packet inspection on that. So that's wireless data as it is, comes off to the wire, and wired data. We don't want to exclude and just say, we're just a wireless play, because we definitely have a lot of people solving problems up the stack and on the wired and wireless services. Again, the idea behind this big data, and there's a lot of organizations out there that do a great job with it, but again, we think that data is great, but data without answers just gives you another tool to go have to sift through a bunch of data. And I'm sure that both Mike and TJ and you guys out there in the audience have a number of questions. Have a number of questions as to, when a network problem happens, how do I solve that? And you have a lot of tools to solve that, to show you extra data or logs. But again, that's why we wanted to be different. We wanted to be able to provide real answers to these questions, so actually use big data. What we normally do, and the truth is what you'll see at the end of this, what we like is we like to do a demo for you guys. For those of you out there that are curious about this product, we do a demo so you see it. We like you to do proof of concepts. As you heard from Mike and TJ, it really doesn't take long to do that, to even get it up and running. But I'm going to go through our product as quickly as I can here. So the VM crawler, so this crawler sends data, just the metrics, the user transaction data to the cloud. And the first thing we do is full stack analysis. So full stack data analysis is, we do correlation. If you look at things very simply, again, it's, imagine a doctor or a medical team only ever studied one human. They would never know what is normal. They don't know what is abnormal, what's right, what is wrong. So that's how, getting a lot of information and correlating it solves a lot of problems, today, from weather to medical to a lot of things out there. And we're doing that for the network. So doing this analysis and correlation, what we see is really we get three main things out of it. The first is reactive problem solving. So reactive problem solving is like help desk. It's solving problems. If TJ or Mike get a call from someone really important at the university, they have to go in and solve a problem very quickly. They do that by going to the search function. The search function, you type in the username, the IP address, MAC address, whatever it would be, and the first thing you see is the suggested root cause and remediation. It says, well, the dean is having this problem, and he or she is having this root cause, and here are the next steps to go fix that problem. And the cool thing here is that, and I know this has happened to a lot of you, is someone comes up to you and says, oh, last week I was having this issue. I was in the lab, and this Wi-Fi was kind of sketchy for me. Well, this actually gives you, this search feature does what we call kind of a network DVR. You can go back and replay it. So you can go back in time to, just based on date code, and say, well, on this day, this person said they had the problem, and then you could go in and see what they were experiencing back in time. With that, you can also see what was the transactions that were happening with this client device. So I see, this person that had the problem in the lab, I see what they were going through, service by service. I see they associated with Wi-Fi. Oh, they had a radius issue. That's something we need to address. But then you want to see, well, what was the environment like? Voyance is telling me the root cause was Skype itself was having an issue. It wasn't actually Wi-Fi. But maybe I'm curious as to what was going on with Wi-Fi at that time. You can see charts that, again, is the experience of those end users while they were connected. What were the other services like? What was DHCP, DNS, ARP? What was going on with all that? So, guys, I think I'm going to start with TJ this time. TJ, do you have a use case in which you've ever done this? And I don't know, you said you answered kind of a larger problem. I don't know if you even work on that side, but have you ever done that before?
Where we actually correlate the issues that are occurring on the network all the way to as small as a user issue to a larger scale issue?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could just give me a time when you've used that, or have you used that?
No, certainly. So we've, with 9Z you get incidents, and, we already talked a little bit about baseline, and you have all these different views, but one of the coolest things that you can do is if you have just one of the instances that comes in, let's say users are experience, timeouts or web latency, you can dive down into that and look all the way from the client all the way to the end, and it actually kind of trends that for you and say, hey, for instance, if you're having issues with DHCP, it'll reference the scopes being exhausted, or it kind of points you in the direction that you need to go.
Okay. Mike, I'll ask you this question. Have you, I'm kind of putting myself on the spot here because I'm nervous for your answer, but what other tools, I'm sure you guys are running other tools and we don't need to talk about them, but do you gain extra insight from this tool? Because, we've had a lot of people ask us, well, what tool do you replace? And I don't necessarily think that Voyance replaces any particular tool today, for the most part. I just think it's kind of an added service. So what, Mike, have you seen the insights that maybe a problem happened that you didn't see in another tool? Has that ever occurred?
Most certainly it has, and we probably wouldn't have seen it if it wasn't for Voyance. Particular report we got from Voyance was that we had clients that seemed to be ping-ponging between two of our SSIDs for some reason. And nobody was really complaining about it. Voyance just sort of raised its hand and said, this looks unusual. This client keeps bouncing back and forth between your open SSID and your 802.1x SSID. So using the timeline feature that's in the product, we could drill down and actually look at the transactions that were going on. And what we saw is they would hit our hit our 802.1x network. They would fail to log in because of a password failure. And then they would jump to our open network. The client machine would just try the next available network, our open network. But our network, open network, doesn't allow clients who are previously attached to our secure network to attach to open. We want them to use secure. So open would reject them and then send them back to EdgeRoam, which is our secure network. So they kept ping-ponging back and forth. The root cause was that they had changed their password. They just hadn't updated the cache credentials for the 802.1x client. So now we know we need to go back and do a little user education, and when they change their password, they need to remember and go and update their wireless devices. Otherwise, they just ping-pong back and forth, back and forth. Nothing wrong with the network. It's really all client and that password change, but we would have never seen that if it wasn't for Voyance.
Wow, that's a great use case. And that actually takes us to a great transition here, which is what Mike did. It was a proactive problem solving. So what happens is Voyance shows you all the incidents in your network. And it sounds like that's what it sounded like, is that Mike saw, this incident came up and said, hey, look, clients are moving SSIDs quite rapidly. And then he drilled down from that to see what was happening. So once we generate an incident, the next thing that is done is you see a baseline. And the baseline is that dark blue line that you see, and then the light blue line is the accepted deviation. And you can change this. You can change your allowable deviation depending on how much you care about a service. I was at a university the other day, and they said the service they care about the most is Netflix because they get the most calls on it. So you can make Netflix a higher priority by tightening up that allowable deviation, and you'll get alerts on it faster. Maybe there's some other kind of application you don't care about as much, maybe Wii support or Xbox 360 support, although you probably want to know about that. So once you see that baseline, Voyance uses that to change priority. In fact, TJ said earlier that he had a DHCP issue, that it came from what was a normal amount of problems, and he saw it rise significantly, and he was alerted to that. And that's what happened is DHCP is probably always an incident at some point. It's just really low priority because it's not affecting many people. But as it goes up and affects more people, what we call the blast radius, then there is more people affected, and we increase priority level to compensate for that. And just like anybody solving a problem, you say, okay, well, this is a problem we have. These are the 9 things that are working, and here's the 2 things that are not working. We show you, here are the things that are working right, and here are the 2 things that are not working right. And that's what drives what I've already talked about, which is the root cause and the remediation next steps. So we do that not only for reactively problem solving, but also for proactive problem solving. With reporting and planning, so this is, again, we're kind of moving up the stack and the chain here, this is the baseline that we saw. And what we show you is a report that says, here's the baseline for your service. You'll notice on this slide, you actually see that there's a blank spot. This is a screen capture from an actual customer, and you see a blank spot. Well, that's because, normally in a network with any kind of a tool, you have to tune it. Well, ours really doesn't require much tuning, if at all, because when the network isn't having as much traffic, we aren't going to compare these apples to oranges situations. So when you see these blanks, that's actually good. That's the system saying, there wasn't as much traffic. They never reached a peak. So that could be a weekend. It could be spring break. It could be summer break. So that's automatically accounted for. So you don't have something happening in the over a weekend that's going to really throw off your alert system. So from that, we take that data. So you can see not only into company reports, you can also not only see how your network is performing, you can compare yourself to yourself. So within specific locations, you can see, okay, I have a Wi-Fi issue, but what's the greatest locations that are causing those Wi-Fi issues? And you can drill down into that and see root cause analysis based on it. So once you take this intercompany reports, as I mentioned before, something I didn't mention that I should. If you look on this slide, you see it's really kind of small to see. You see a little dot, a blue dot with an A in there. That's an annotation. An annotation is when you make a change to your network. Let's say you make a configuration change to Wi-Fi, or maybe you spent money on some new access points or a new DNS server. You annotate that within Voyance. And then what you see is you look for any change. So let's say TJ says, oh, well, I read on the internet that I should, be enabling 80 megahertz wide channels. So he runs off and does that, which I know he wouldn't, but let's say he did. You can see the results from that change. You can see that, he made that change to his network, and he can see from the end user perspective, how did that affect performance? I guess, so TJ, I'll start with you on this one. Have you ever done that? Have you ever made a change and annotate it within Voyance, and how did that work out?
No, certainly. So one of the ways that we've done that in the past is the most recent code upgrade that we did. We looked at Voyance before we did the code upgrade, and then after we upgraded, we went ahead and took a look to see what was happening on our network. And one of the things that we saw was that clients were actually roaming a lot better than they were before, based on some of the other changes that we had done during the upgrade. And we could see that deviation, which really helped us.
Wow, that's cool. And I will say that I kind of sneakily monitor the EDUCAUSE forums. So I see that, there's some chatter about, what code version is good, what code version is bad. And I'm sitting here thinking that if all of these schools were running Voyance, what we can actually show is we can say, well, this code version actually checks out, because we can see and correlate all of that information together. So we can see how that data has, we see, oh, well, this code version of Aruba or this code version of Cisco has been run by, we see all our customers and we see that it's had no ill effects. And in the case that you said, TJ, it actually had improvement. So, sometimes I wish the whole world ran this, not only because I'm working here, because I think it'd be neat. But as I mentioned before, this cross-company analytics is a way for you to be able to see how does your service rank based on others. You can see this, the darker purple is you, so that's when you're logged in, you'll see how you rank versus other organizations, and this is all anonymous. So this is like a medical study. You're part of it, but you don't, no one knows who you are. And so this cross-company analytics shows you how you rank. Mike, I'll switch it back to you. How have you used this, or have you logged into this part of Voyance, and how have you used this, if at all?
Yes, we have definitely logged into that part, and we are starting to take a look at some of the reports available. There are two incidents that we've looked at recently. We had noticed that in some places on our campus, people were having DNS failures, which sort of made no sense to us because we run centralized DNS and everybody gets the same DNS servers. We couldn't figure out why, a particular building was being reported as a high failure rate where the rest of the campus seemed fine. So we drilled down into it, and it turns out that some of the clients were manually setting their own DNS servers to outside DNS servers off campus. And they were getting failures because mostly we tend to block that kind of behavior because we don't want people doing that. So it showed up as DNS failures, but then when you drill down, because of Voyance being able to see the transactions, it can tell us, well, that client's using these 4 DNS servers, and they're two of ours and 2 of somebody else's. So now we can go after those clients and say, hey, you really shouldn't be doing that. We serve you the DNS servers we prefer that you use. We actually block them with the firewall. So that's a user experience that's self-inflicted by the end user, but it's something that the product showed us. The other issue was we have 4 dormitories that are pretty much mirrored images of each other. They're wired the same way. They have access points essentially in the same places. 3 of the 4 are fine. The 4th one seems to be having a lot of interference and wireless interference. And we sort of scratching our heads saying, well, what's going on over there? And they're pretty much empty because it was right at the end of the school year. And we couldn't figure out what was going on. And then we took a look at the physical plant side of things. And they built some new dorms adjacent to these dorms a couple of years back. And they dropped a big power transformer right outside of the building that's having all these problems. So now we have to go look and see if that might be causing issues. It could be that we have this 4,000, amp transformer, or volt transformer, I should say, sitting outside of this building, which is probably radiating enough, noise that it's causing problems inside the building. So another thing where we wouldn't have seen it normally, but Voyance pointed it out to us.
Wow, that's cool. I did get a question that came in. I think I can answer this one. Is switch and AP compatibility an issue with Voyance, or is it open to most brands? On the switch side, we don't require any sort of interoperability, so any switch out there we can work with. AP compatibility, right now we work with Cisco, Ruckus, and Aruba, and that integration is quite intensive because we do very, very detailed interoperability with the AP controller systems. So that's how we get a lot of that information, is we're pulling data from controllers and correlating it. So that's why we do have a limitation on the access point side for now, but not on the switch side, because we're just pulling all data off of it. And I'll ask you a question back. You can go ahead and text back in. Is that we see that, especially in the higher ed space, Cisco and Aruba cover a large portion of the networks of people, what they're running out there, but of course not all of them. So the next, so again, Mike, thank you for, and TJ, thank you for those answers. Those were great. So you see that the use cases for the product is really diverse, if you will. That it goes from the help desk level that we talked about, network operations, and even the CIO. We know that the CIOs out there want to see the reports, and a lot of times, I know TJ and Mike both have someone to report to and say, well, I just spent money on this. And they can see how that affected. You can use that system to do that But the other thing is you can do is, even as detailed is, let's say Mike wants to spend money on, new access points to upgrade. He can actually go in and compare his network to others and see what other people are running, and that helps give you ammunition to be able to say, here's what other people are running, and they have a better Wi-Fi network than we do, and here's the contributing factors to that. So what's next? So this is so what we're looking to do is, again, we have a couple questions coming in. But what we want to do is, with us, is schedule an online demo. You can do that with info@nyansa.com. You'll reach, basically, there's only 2 of us that monitor that, so you'll get me and you'll get David, my boss. And then we're going to Cisco Live. We are going to have a suite there, and we're already, I've seen the schedules doing really well with getting people that want to talk to us in person. So if you happen to be going to Cisco Live. But I do have some questions that are coming in. Let me see here. What do we require on the network in order to do this? Yeah, I mentioned that before in a slide. So all we require is what we call our software crawler. It's not a sensor, so you don't put any sensors. There's no client software. There's no synthetic transactions. Everything in the network, we just pull off of this VM crawler. If you don't have a VM infrastructure near your core, we can also ship that out in an appliance. We actually don't charge for that. We're not in the business of hardware and shipping you gear. That isn't where we're trying to do this. We're a cloud service. So if you don't have VM, don't worry about it. We can also send you an appliance. And I think that's both Mike and TJ. Both you guys got an appliance from us, right? Just a Dell server?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So I have another question for you guys. So I think, I don't know, TJ, we'll go with you first here. What do you want to be able to do with network analytics? I mean, I don't know how much you'd heard of analytics before we chatted with you, but what do you want to be able to do with that can demonstrably help your network? So, feel free to fire away. What do you want to see from it? And maybe it's even stuff that we don't do today.
No, certainly. So some of the biggest challenges we have at Liberty is justifying things, and our CIO is all about numbers, and we like to be able to give him the numbers that he requests. So some of the things that we're really big on is analytics as a whole from a university standpoint and IT. But one of the things that we haven't really had a lot to do with, and one of the questions that always comes up is, what are other universities and other companies doing today? Which you kind of spoke on that a little bit, and being able to compare, yourselves to other universities, whether it be web traffic, DHCP, DNS, and having that comparison to see what others are doing, but also being able to get a hold of the data that the end users, are providing to us, but at the same time being able to trend that, correlate that to where we can help resolve and remediate issues, as they happen or even before they happen. And that's kind of where I was going earlier is, we have that today with, Cisco Prime and Airwave, but it's really more of a granular view on what we see from our network and not as much as what we see from the end users, as well as, there's really no other product out there that is correlating things like you guys are doing today. And one of the other things that we've talked a lot about is being able to take the data that we're getting on our network and also kind of being able to manipulate that and trend that in-house. And that's something that we've been talking about internally for a while now as well. But I see that as being one of the biggest driving points for us is really the end user experience, and how can we be better from a university's perspective and as a business to help remediate those issues and also provide a better user experience.
Awesome. So, Mike, I'll ask you the same question. What do you want to be able to do with analytics to help your infrastructure and service quality reliability? And again, it may not be stuff that we do today.
Right. I think I agree with TJ that you want to be proactive here. You want to provide the best end user experience, and at the end of the day, they're the ones who count. How we feel about the network and how it's operating is irrelevant if the user can't get to the website they're trying to get to or can't run the application they need to run. So what I'm hoping to do is be able to just be that much more proactive in addressing those issues. And like I said, it's the fuzzy ones. The break-fix stuff is easy. It's easy to spot. Generally, it's easy to fix. But the fuzzy stuff where works for some people, doesn't work for others, or works for some operating systems and not for others, those are the kind of things that are more difficult, and try to trend those types of things. We had a problem yesterday where a box got checked on the wireless controllers by one of the engineers that turned on a feature campus-wide, which wasn't intended to be campus-wide, and it broke connectivity. But it only broke connectivity for a whole bunch of older versions of Apple and Windows operating systems, not the new stuff, just the older stuff. That was a little hard to find. It jumps out relatively quickly when you can start looking at, these clients are having the issues, and oh look, they're all Windows, 7s, with not the right service pack, or it's, in this case, Apple 10.7 when people should generally be on 10.10 or 11 or whatever the most recent one is. So being able to spot those trends, be proactive, get the experience up to snuff before people even have a chance to complain about it. That's what we're looking for.
So Mike, a great answer. How would you have solved that problem in the past? That you did this you did that config change, and only certain devices were affected. How would you have solved that in the past?
Very manually. I think what would happen is that all the various staff members who are all sort of chiming in on the problem would have to sort of start correlating. Oh, wait a minute, it's this version of the operating system. Oh, it's this version, but it doesn't seem to be recent ones. Oh, look, that person just upgraded. They had 10.8, Mac OS, but they didn't have the latest patches. They put the latest patches. Now that works. Windows 7. Oh, they had to reload the Intel drivers. Now that one works. So it was slowly coming together. But with Voyance can show you that type of stuff and correlate it all together, and so you don't have that long time lag of that manual process. And that's before this product. That's pretty much what it was. You have to have somebody sort of with the big picture view who takes a step back and goes, oh look, I can see what's going on here. This is older operating systems that don't support that new feature that just got turned on.
TJ, do you have any thoughts on that? I want to give you a shot too, if you have any.
No, definitely. I was just about to ask it if you would. So I completely agree. I mean, the time it used to take to remediate some of those issues and the fuzzy issues, as Mike said, it used to take quite a while to find those issues, and you have to dive into multiple systems, whereas you guys kind of correlate everything and kind of point us in the right direction. And even for some of our younger engineers who, that are just coming on board and that, we're training up, and, they can actually see those issues as they happen, and that's something that's kind of new, and it's kind of interesting because, we have these new guys. One of the things that we don't necessarily want to do is give them a lot of access, but we also want them to learn, and some of them may not have the experience that some of us other engineers and the higher tier engineers have on our team, and they're actually able to see those issues that happen, which has been kind of cool. But I completely agree, Mike. I think it's huge that we're able to have that visibility and granularity now.
Okay. I got a few questions that came in I can answer real quick. Is any packet, payload, data, or examined or stored? No, we don't look at the payload itself. A lot of that's encrypted anyway. We don't decrypt it. But we also don't move it. So we don't store it locally, and we don't put it to the cloud. So I know that's a lot of security questions out there to get that. Second question is, how does the system talk to the controllers? Is this done in real time? Yeah, different controllers. So Cisco, Aruba, and Ruckus both do things differently. So it's a little bit different per vendor, but it is done in real time. So we're basically, we're getting traps, we're doing requests, we're just receiving streams of information. And let's see, sorry. And then how much data is sent to the cloud? Great question. So for about every gigabit per second that we process on beat packet inspection, about 500 kilobits goes to the cloud. So it's actually quite kind of low. And then a question that has come in about, how long do we store data for historical purposes? As I mentioned before, we have, this network DVR. So for 15 days, you get bit by bit information. And what I mean by that is every piece of data that we capture and all the analysis we do is stored for 15 days. And then historically, you can look back 6 months. So if you want to compare your service as over the next 6 months, you can do that. There are options to go longer than that. There is a cost involved. We actually don't think have any customers that have needed to go any longer, so that's not like an upsell we're trying to do. But it is there if for those of you out there that need to. I got a question came in. I don't know if either of you are running Splunk, but have any of you used the log aggregation services from Splunk? And we don't see ourselves as a Splunk for placement. We think they're a great company, but either of you use that?
Yeah, so here at Brandeis, we actually are using Splunk, and pretty much all of our servers and our network here is pointed at Splunk to aggregate all of the syslog information. The drawback of that is that unless you want to become a Splunk programmer and write a lot of custom reports, it's a very manual process to make any use of that data. You can search it, you can pull up data sets to your heart's content, but until you can really correlate and put everything together, it's a challenge. We do use Splunk for some automated alerts. So like TJ mentioned, running out of leases. We actually created a Splunk alert to watch for that syslog message coming from our DHCP servers and throw an email to the NOC if anything starts complaining about running out of leases. But once again, that's a very unique thing. It took somebody sitting down and writing code in Splunk to make it happen. And it's sort of a one-off as far as I'm concerned, and I try to stay away from the one-offs.
Okay. Appreciate that. So quick questions. I think I can handle these. What about pricing? How do we price this? I knew that was going to come up. So basically, we price on an annual subscription. There's no other cost, so we don't charge for the crawlers. We don't charge for support. There's nothing of that. So there's an annual subscription cost, and it's not based on a lot. This question says based on the amount of data processed. No, we don't do that, and I know other companies like Splunk do that, and that makes it a bit hard. All we look at is either your number of users or your number of nodes, like access points and switches, and then you get put into a small, medium, large category to do that, for your pricing. So you know your pricing. If you stay basically within the user count that you give us, if you know you have 20,000 students and faculty and it goes to 21,000, we don't care. We're not difficult to deal with like that. If you go from 20,000 and you buy another school and go to 40,000, okay, that's something we need to talk about. But it's just annual subscription. Let's see. How much configuration is there to do on this product? Well, I'll ask both TJ and Mike. So TJ, how much configuration have you done? What have you had to do since you've had it installed?
So in all honesty, once you get everything set up and configured, there's really no configuration that's needed other than setting up the users and alerts that you want to tie in. With reporting, you can edit some of the baselines, and they're adding more and more features every day, but there's really not much to it. And I think that's one of the best benefits of it is for us and everything that we have going on a daily basis, all you really have to do is set up whether it be S&P or AIM on, point your controllers at it, and just let it go.
Okay. Cool. Question, how many crawlers are needed, and how much data do they handle? So every network is different. So every network sometimes needs more crawlers. Most of the time that's due to network architecture. The crawlers that we ship out can handle 20 gigabits per second. So that's obviously a lot. I mean, that's tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands plus users to get that kind of data. So sometimes a network may need more crawlers, but again, we don't charge by that. So as many as someone would need, it'd be great. TJ, what's the biggest single benefit the product has given, that you haven't talked about really before? Or maybe that's it.
I'd say that there's a lot of benefits to it, but I'd say the analytical side and the baseline that you're able to get and to be able to compare yourself to other universities has been huge for us just in the justification side. Because like I kind of spoke on earlier, we have to justify a lot of what we do as engineers, and then also be able to correlate that to a return on investment. And I think that's where it can really come into play and really help. But I'd say the single most biggest benefit that you get out of the product is being able to be proactive about the end user's experience.
Awesome. Mike, I think I'm gonna finish this up. I have one last question that came in, but Mike, I'll turn that to you too. Is there any? You guys have been saying great things about us, but is there anything kind of that else you have to say about it, good or bad?
No, not really. Well, I guess from the good standpoint is that we've been using this since last year. We got in very early and have worked with the Nyansa team to really have a lot of input into what the product looks like. I'm an operations guy. When they first came to us, the tool was much more analytic, but it didn't really do much for as far as near or real time. And from an operations standpoint, what happened last Tuesday is great to know for troubleshooting in long term, but I need to know what happened in the last 10 minutes because that's when the help desk call is going to reach me when something breaks. And the Nyansa team heard that message and immediately sort of took a step back, and then within a few weeks they had a 10-minute rolling window dashboard available to us, so we can actually see what's going on the network. What went on in the last 10 minutes? So if we started to get calls from the help desk saying, hey, all of a sudden people can't connect to Yahoo or any websites or whatever, we can look at the window dashboard and it tells you your DNS looks good, your DHCP looks good, your radius looks good. If there's a DNS problem, that dial turns to orange or red and it says, hey, you've got a DNS problem going on, and then you can drill down and see which one of your DNS servers is having an issue if that's really the case. So the fact that they're adding new features constantly, and what's really nice about when they add new features, I don't have to do a thing. It's all done in the cloud, so I'm not having to update the software. I'm not having to take the server offline and put a new version of the application on it. It's just I get an email from the answer that says, "Oh, we just added these 6 new features. You should check them out." And off you go. And it just happens magically. And that's a real good thing when you have a small staff like ours, and we really don't want to be working at 5 in the morning a lot, which is our quiet time on our network. So that flexibility and willingness to take that customer feedback and turn it into real features in the product has been great.
Awesome.
I 100% agree. I have to say one thing about the Nyansa team is that no matter what you guys ask or what, you always get a very concise answer whether they're able to do it or not, but they are always willing to look into it. And if they can't get the data for you, they always somehow manage to come up with a way to get the data for you, which has been a huge benefit for us and their willingness to work with us.
Awesome. Well, gentlemen, I think that's a great place to stop. I just wanted to, before I turn it over to Andrew, you guys out there in the audience, if you guys want to see this product with a live demo, please email us at info@nyansa.com. And if you are going to Cisco Live, we have a suite. We'll hang out, we'll chat about it. If you want to do a proof of concept, this is how we do it. This is how these guys started with proof of concept. There's no obligation. Email us, info@nyansa.com. We'll get you a crawler, get you looking at your own data. Before I turn it back over, TJ, Mike, very much appreciate it. You guys are rock stars. Andrew, it's back over to you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, GT, and thank you to Mike and TJ for a really interesting discussion this afternoon. I haven't seen any further questions come over the transom in the last couple of minutes, so we'll wrap up. I know how busy everyone is, that we've got wrap up a tiny bit early. But as we wrap up, I do want to thank again GT Hill, Mike Fitzgerald, and TJ Norton for an excellent presentation. And I also want to thank Nyansa for its support. And one final reminder before we sign off, we will be sending out an email to all attendees when the recording of the webinar is ready. So thank you, and thank you for attending today, and this concludes today's webcast. Goodbye.